Hello everyone, thank you for joining us today for another webinar in our Market Access and International Approvals webinar series. My name is Ashley and I'm part of the Certification and Approvals technical staff here at Vista Compliance Laboratories. Today I'll be presenting you with the certification and approval regulations as well as the technical requirements for electrical equipment, electronics, and wireless product and device approval in Taiwan. The Bureau of Standards Metrology and Inspection, or BSMI, is a regulatory body that sets the standards that are required by the Taiwan government for a number of diverse activities. Most products that enter Taiwan must meet the requirements outlined in BSMI. Any device with an electrical power source will require a BSMI safety approval. Radio frequency devices are required to be properly approved by Taiwan's Telecommunications Governing Agency, NCC, prior to being marketed or imported into Taiwan, and a certificate of type approval is required for regulated devices to be sold in or imported into Taiwan. Vista Laboratories is an EMC RF compliance test lab and product certification body and experts in global regulatory approvals for RF devices. So today we will be going over the requirements of radio frequency and safety approvals in Taiwan. In this webinar, we will provide an overview of the major topics necessary to understand the process and get your devices on the right track for authorization and distribution in Taiwan. If you have any questions on the topics presented today, or any other immediate questions regarding compliance testing and product certifications, you can reach us at info@vista-compliance.com. Let's begin the presentation. BSMI, Bureau of Standard Metrology and Inspection, under the Ministry of Economic Affairs, is the authority responsible for standardization, metrology, and product inspection in Taiwan. BSMI is the designated authority in Taiwan for EMC, EMI, and product safety of many types of equipment, including information technology equipment, ITE. BSMI regulates many different product types in Taiwan, including information technology equipment, household appliances, multimedia equipment, and other products. The RF, wireless, and telecom equipment is regulated by NCC. CNS standards are called the China National Standards, CNS, and are based on CISPR EMC test standards. CISPR is the international EMC standard, and it doesn't mean all countries will adopt this new standard right away. Taiwan is still using the old standards. Like CISPR 11 is Industrial, Scientific, and Medical, which is CNS 13803, and CISPR 13 Audio and Video Equipment is CNS 13439, and so on. These are the different BSMI schemes, also known as the Taiwan Commodity Inspection Schemes, TCI schemes, are administered by BSMI as the competent authority by Ministry of Economic Affairs, MOEA, under the Commodity Inspection Act. Inspection of electrical and electronic commodities is conducted according to 3 schemes, namely batch-by-batch inspection, registration of product certification, and declaration of conformity. Instead of going through the complicated and time-consuming batch-by-batch inspection procedures, BSMI encourages local suppliers to adopt the registration of product certification scheme. Today we will be focusing on the RPC and DOC schemes. RPC covers a wide range of product types. DOC covers much fewer. DOC covers product types such as household appliances, electrical tools, and information technology equipment, equipment for switching the electrical circuits, wires, cables, plugs, and sockets, electric motors, firearm equipment, portable electromechanical tools. RPC covers equipment such as industrial, scientific, and medical equipment, fluorescent lights, luminaries, broadcast receivers and related equipment, television and videotape recorder and player, radio broadcast receiver, and video and audio apparatus. Let's take a look at some general requirements. In addition to following the CNS standards, the following items are required. Test reports and test certificates. These must be within 3 years of issuing. Appliances must be tested to 110/220 VAC. All ITE and MME must perform radiated emissions above 1 GHz. In addition, BSMI requires that the national differences for 10 different IEC 60335 Part 2 standards must be adopted, 2 of which are listed here. Equivalent supply cords that comply with CNS 3199, CNS 546, CNS 6556, or CNS 10741 are allowed. The procedure for BSMI batch-by-batch inspection is as follows. An applicant shall complete an application form and make the application to the inspection authority of the entry port upon arrival of the commodities. This may be a good choice for small quantities of products or limited production. At the discretion of BSMI, a type approval certificate, valid for 3 years, may be required before applying for the simplified batch inspection procedure. Under this procedure, the manufacturer or importer shall have their products type tested by the BSMI or designated testing laboratories recognized by the BSMI, and then file an application for type approval with the BSMI. After that, manufacturers must file an application for inspection with the BSMI before their products are to be released from the production premises or arrive at the port of entry. Type approval products design designated by the BSMI permits the applicant to print the mark, the Roman letter T, followed by a designated code. This label is generally printed by BSMI. Commodities manufactured by organizations with management systems certified by the BSMI permitting the applicant to print the mark, the Roman letter Q, with a designated code, and lastly, commodities designated by the BSMI permitting the applicant to print the mark a Roman letter N with a designated code. Up next, we will go over registration and product certification. This is what the process for RPC, also known as the registration and product certification, looks like. When the parties, either local or foreign, decide to supply the regulated commodities subject to the RPC scheme, they shall submit them to a designated testing laboratory, which can be either local or foreign, or recognized testing lab under mutual recognition agreement for type testing. After the regulated commodities have been successfully type tested, the designated testing laboratories or recognized testing laboratories shall issue test reports to the parties. The local suppliers shall submit the reports and the specified documents to a designated commodity certifications body for certification. The designated commodity certification body shall, upon receipt of the applications, issue identification numbers to the applicants to assist them in preparation of the commodity inspection mark. After the regulated commodities have been successfully certified, the designated commodity certification bodies shall issue certificates of registration of product certification to the applicants. The competent authority shall then register the certified regulated commodities in their database. Accordingly, the local suppliers can affix the commodity inspection mark on the registered regulated commodities and commence supply. In cases where there are modifications to the registered regulated commodities, the local suppliers are required to inform the designated commodity certification bodies depending on the type of modifications. Lastly, the local suppliers are required to maintain a technical file on the registered regulated commodities. So, what are the requirements for registration of product certification? CV report certificates are not accepted as proof of safety compliance under RPC inspection scheme, but can be used. These reports can be leveraged by conversion into a BSMI accepted report in certain cases. If the CV report is issued by a BSMI certified CV lab, The CB report is eligible to be converted into BSMI specific report by local safety labs without additional testing. Not all CB test labs are registered with the BSMI. In other words, some CB reports would not be eligible to be converted into BSMI specific report. BSMI EMC test report, BSMI safety test report, block diagram schematics, user manual in traditional Chinese. For certification purposes, it can be in English, but must be in Mandarin when sent with the end product. Bill of materials parts list, internal-external photos. Label with BSMI mark. One sample for EMC safety testing with setup instructions. Other requirements include ISO 9001 certificate, report of factory inspection, and declaration of conformity. Under RPC, there are actually 7 modules for certifications such as internal control, type testing, quality assurance, and factory inspection, and they all have different requirements, so other information may be necessary. BSMI approval process generally takes 8 to 10 weeks depending on product complexity. Moving on, more information regarding the actual RPC certification. The certificate itself is valid for 3 years and can be renewed. The certification body must be informed of any modifications or changes to registered commodities or equipment. Technical and non-technical modifications are allowed, but additional testing and recertification may be required depending on the change that is performed. As for renewals, it is best practice to approach the certification body before the certificate expires because the new certificates must be submitted to BSMI for registration. Keep in mind equipment must be registered and suppliers must have certificates. Simply having the certificate and not registering the product is considered non-regulated or a non-compliant commodity. Suppliers who own certificates without registering the competent authority are not allowed to supply the certified regulated commodities to the domestic market as their commodities will be deemed as non-registered regulated commodities. Any suppliers who supply non-registered regulated commodities shall be imposed with a fine and subject to further penalties. Next up, we will be talking about Declaration of Conformity, DOC. The DOC approval process is shown here. It is similar to the RPC approval process with a few minor differences. When the parties decide to supply the regulated commodities subject to the DOC scheme, they shall submit them to a designated testing laboratory, local or foreign, or recognized testing laboratory, MRA, for type testing. After the regulated commodities have been successfully type tested, the designated testing laboratory, local or foreign, or recognized testing laboratory shall issue test reports to the applicants. The local suppliers shall submit the applications to the BSMI competent authority to register themselves. The competent authority shall, upon receipt of the applications, issue identification numbers which shall be issued to the commodity inspection mark to the local suppliers. Accordingly, the local suppliers can affix the commodity inspection mark on the registered regulated commodities and commence supply. In cases where there are modifications to the registered regulated commodities, the local suppliers are required to inform the designated testing laboratories or recognized testing laboratories or the competent authority depending on the type of modifications. Let's now take a look at the requirements for DOC. Again, CB report certificates are not accepted as proof of safety compliance under RPC inspection scheme, but can be used. You will need an eligible CB report issued by a BSMI registered CB lab for the CB report to be eligible to be converted into BSMI specific report by a local safety lab without additional testing. BSMI EMC test report, BSMI safety test report, block diagram schematics, user manual in traditional Chinese, bill of materials parts list, internal-external photos, label with BSMI mark, one sample for EMC safety testing. Other requirements include ROHS declaration. The manufacturer can fulfill the BSMI ROHS requirements through following methods. system-level ROHS testing and report or measurement data for the individual components. In this case, a local supplier representative would review the ROHS information, and if acceptable, the local supplier rep would generate the BSMI ROHS declaration. BSMI may request additional information related to EUT's ROHS information when carrying out the market surveillance, and these are very important because they expect responses within 28 days. BSMI approval process generally takes 4 to 6 weeks depending on product complexity, but it's normally quicker than the RPC procedure. Moving on, we will talk about general modifications, requirements, marking, surveillance applicable to RPC and DOC. Now let's go over how modifications to equipment are handled. Modifications, or as we call it, permissive changes in the U.S. What is considered a modification by BSMI? Any change made to the registered regulated commodities. Change in model number. If the model number is changed, then the commodity must be re-registered and recertified, and a new certificate is required. Change in technical characteristic of equipment and or change of information listed in the RPC certificate. If this happens, a new test report and submission to the certification body to apply for permission is required, and a new certificate of RPC may be issued depending on the change involved. For non-technical changes such as color changes or other changes that do not affect the production of the commodity, the regulated commodities do not have to be re-registered with the BSMI. The regulated commodities also do not have to be re-registered with the designated commodity certification bodies or recognized commodity certification bodies. The local supplier only needs to update the technical file with the modification. For example, merely stating the changes in the aesthetics or color and that it does not affect the safety, EMC, or other regulated aspects of the regulated commodities. So, all changes require updates to the technical files with the details of the change. These are the requirements under RPC. As for the DOC scheme, in the case the regulated commodity is modified technically, the local supplier shall execute and issue a new declaration to ensure the continued conformity of the product. All regulated commodities must bear the commodity inspection mark before they can be supplied to the Taiwan market. Local suppliers are responsible for ensuring that the regulated commodities are affixed with the commodity inspection mark. The competent authority will conduct spot checks on manufacturers, importers, traders, warehouses when it is deemed necessary. Now let's take a look at the different types of BSMI markings. For registration or product certification, this applies to electrical appliances, fire equipment, electronics, information technology equipment, construction products, gas appliances, baby products, electrically operated hand tools, personal protective equipment, etc., and starts with the letter R. For declaration of conformity scheme labels, start with the letter D. Equipment that require this label include computer products, mainboards, insert cards, etc. Two examples of the label text is shown here. The first label indicates that the lead percentage content in certain parts of the commodity exceeds the reference percentage value of presence condition. The second is indicating that the cadmium, chromium in certain parts of the commodity exceed the reference percentage value of presence condition respectively. Let's now take a look at various surveillance activities performed by BSMI, starting with spot checks. The competent authority will conduct spot checks on manufacturers, importers, traders, warehouses when it is deemed necessary. Check for product marking. They may also initiate product investigations or, if necessary, initiate a recall of products. Some of the responsibilities of the supplier include maintaining declarations or certificates and making them available upon request. Technical documentation must be maintained and submitted to BSMI upon request. The maintenance of the technical files is necessary to enable the competent authority to carry out its investigation duties in the event of a complaint, incident, or accident. Upon receiving a request made by the competent authority, the local suppliers must provide the declaration of conformity to competent authority within 24 hours and relevant technical files to the competent authority within 10 working days. All documents should be retained for at least 8 years following the RPC approval scheme or 5 years if following declaration of conformity. This means even retained for at least 5 years after end life of product. If the product is discontinued, the documentation shall be retained for at least 5 years after. Penalties range from NTD 200,000 to NTD 2 million, which is roughly 7,000 to 70,000 US dollars. In terms of modifications, the supplier is responsible for all modifications in the end, but these product modifications must be informed to certification bodies. Local suppliers shall be responsible for the regular updating of the technical files, especially if there have been modifications made to the declared regulated commodities. Supplementary testing and declaration are required if there are modifications with safety and/or EMC implications. Now moving on to NCC. What is the NCC? The National Communications Commission. It was created in 2006. The mission of NCC is to regulate the information, communications, and broadcasting industry in Taiwan. They are the designated authority in Taiwan for radio and telecommunications terminal equipment. All products able to connect to the public switchboard communications network or products emitting radio frequency require approval and registration before they can be marketed and sold in Taiwan. The National Communications Commission has a large scope that covers regulation of the development of the communications and information industry, promoting competition, consumer protection, broadcasting and licensing, managing the national radio frequency spectrum, content regulation, and communication standards and specifications. Here are some NCC regulated products: public switch telephone network equipment, wire telephones, fax machines, land mobile communications network equipment, GSMN, mobile and terminal equipment, wireless devices, integrated services digital network, ISDN, private automatic branch exchange, low power RF devices, Bluetooth, RFID, WLAN, etc. There are two forms of NCC verification methods, either by declaration of conformity or type certification. Taiwan's National Communications Commission officially announced a simplified verification scheme, the Declaration of Conformity (DOC) as of July 1, 2017, to regulate the following Bluetooth devices only: Bluetooth mouse, Bluetooth keyboard, Bluetooth headset, Bluetooth selfie stick, Bluetooth stylus pen, Bluetooth speaker. Under the new DOC scheme, the approval process is simplified, so it's called the Simplified Declaration of Conformity and will not require local testing, as FCC test reports can be leveraged. There are also a few other methods, including part-by-part verification, self-use verification, simple compliance statement, but we will take a look at DOC and type certification today. Now, looking at the DOC requirements, as previously mentioned, only certain Bluetooth devices can apply for either Simplified Declaration of Conformity. The applicant must provide the equivalent test report of LP0002, Low Power Radio Frequency Devices Technical Specifications. Some examples of devices regulated under DOC: Bluetooth mouse, Bluetooth keyboard, Bluetooth headset, Bluetooth speakers. The NCC recognizes the same documents issued by laboratories in other nations, so as long as the regulations are similar to NCC regulations, such as those with the U.S. Federal Communications Commission, are recognized and accepted. Please make sure that the model name and brand name are shown in all technical documents. For simplified DOCs, the NCC certificate is valid indefinitely and has no expiration date. Up next, we will be going over type certification. So a quick look at the NCC approval and application process. The first thing the applicant must do is perform testing by NCC recognized test laboratory. This means providing samples and the information required and prepping the application to be submitted to test lab recognized by the NCC, which can be a foreign lab under MRA, so it does not have to be a local Taiwan lab. Submit application and test reports to certification body. So after the completion of the testing and issue the test report and submit the reports to NCC. Then the NCC audit report and other application documents. So if there's no problem after that, then the NCC issues certification. Manufacturer has responsibilities to uphold for maintaining compliance of the product, such as the supplier affixing the NCC label to the product and ensuring the product's continued compliance. So the requirements in terms of documentation. Application authorization forms, technical specifications including product spec and antenna spec, NCC test reports, block diagram schematics, user manual in traditional Chinese. Again, for the application, the English version of user manual is allowed, but please note that Chinese version is required when product is available in the Taiwan market. Internal external photos, label with NCC mark, business license, 1 to 2 samples required. Other requirements are a local representative. Again, the model name and brand name have to be shown in all technical documents and should be consistent. The NCC certificate is valid indefinitely and has no expiration date. The next topic is module approval, meaning certifying radio modules or using pre-certified radio modules. Under NCC, module approval is allowed. To integrate a pre-certified radio module in a host product, we simply need to obtain a license for the pre-certified module. TTE end products are required to apply for NCC approval, meaning modular is not applicable. System-level approvals are needed in all TTE end products. Short-range devices and products without an RF module are required to obtain NCC approval. All other products can put contains radio module NCC ID number XXX on the host product. It is allowed to use an integrated radio module as long as we mention the ID of the module integrated. So what is a host product? It is a product that can work normally without radio module certification, like a computer or notebook PC. A notebook or PC can function normally without a radio module, so the notebook PC is an host product. But on the other hand, Bluetooth handsets can only work normally without a radio module, so a Bluetooth handset isn't an end-host product. The validity period is indefinite, so no expiration for modular approvals. Modifications to equipment. Any change to descriptions on certificate except for the addition or removal of test category, certification type, and certification item must be reported to NCC within 15 days after the change. The original certificate attached when reporting the change, the validity of the reissued certificate will be the same as the original one. Changes in the model design, RF performance, or function require new type certification. However, when the design and performance of the change still meet the technical specifications, only the test report needs to be changed. The applicant must continuously meet the verification requirements. Equipment in production must continue to meet the product validation requirements of the certified product. So this means if NCC certified telecommunications equipment has any changes to the product name, product model, it will require a new certification. Now we will talk about product labeling and marking. The NCC logo is mandatory on the product and package. As you can see, there is an example on the slide. Capital CC, fixed code for declaration of import equipment types, customs clearance. Capital XX, certification body. Lowercase xx, year. For example, 2021 is 21. Capital YY, type of equipment. Lowercase YYY, table number. Year from 001 to 999. Capital Z, serial number. Lowercase c, table verification number. Capital W, checked code. The table shown on the slide shows the different equipment types and codes that are available. The NCC logo is mandatory on the product and the package. There are also mandatory statements on user manual. The label should be affixed or printed in the proper position of the equipment body with an appropriate ratio. There's no maximum minimum size requirement, and the principle of clarity. NCC marks, NCC logo should be greater than 15 millimeters. The NCC certification mark together with the inspection qualification number shall be attached to the product in accordance with the regulations. The frequency shall be single and shall be clear and easily identifiable. Printing NCC logo is mandatory on both the product and the package. It is to be noted that earlier it was only printed on the product. Surveillance. Any unauthorized manufacture, import, sale, or public display of telecommunications-controlled radio frequency equipment that has not been type approved and verified will result in fines. Possible reasons for revoking certificates. Changes in its model, design, performance, and has not reapplied for type certification or examination. Does not meet new revised technical specifications for type certification or examination. The data obtained at the time of the application for type certification or examination was faulty. Failure to comply with technical specifications upon market surveillance testing. Product investigations. Initiate recall of products. After revocation or of type certification certificate or validation certificate within 3 months from the date of revocation or annulment, the same brand of equipment of the same type may not reapply for type certification or examination. The State Telecommunications and Communications Commission or Verification Agency may be the original holder and the revocation or revocation of the cause of notice. The manufacturer shall recycle the sold equipment and equipment after the revocation or annulment of the type certification certificate. If the rights and interests of others are damaged as a result, the manufacturer shall be liable for damages. Retain all technical docs for at least 5 years after end of product life. That concludes the requirements for the declarations of conformity and type certification. This concludes our webinar on market access, certifications, and approvals for electrical equipment and wireless products in Taiwan. I hope this webinar was helpful for you in understanding the process for BSMI and NCC approval and certifications, as well as what requirements are applicable. Compliance with the technical requirements of BSMI and NCC are required for the radio and telecom products. All electrical equipment and devices require approval and testing in Taiwan prior to distribution or placement on the market. VISTA Compliance Lab specializes in certifications, approvals, and compliance testing for electrical and radio frequency devices and is a 17025 accredited EMC RF Compliance Test Lab and 17065 accredited product certification body. We are a telecommunications certification body in the US, Canada, EU, Hong Kong, Singapore, and Japan, and we provide certification and approvals for all product types and countries all over the world. If you would like to stay in touch with regulatory updates, follow us online. And if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions on the information presented today, or any general inquiries, you can reach us at any time at info@vista-compliance.com. Thank you for your time and have a wonderful day.